So today I'm going to give you a very quick introduction on pivot tables. Pivot tables are a great summary tool in any spreadsheet program when you're talking about large quantities of data. I'm currently using Microsoft Excel in Windows, but you have pivot tables in Mac and in Google Sheets as well. Okay, so I've downloaded some data on COVID-19 statistics in Alberta from the Alberta government website because I've been listening to the news lately and they've been saying that the COVID-19 positive rates are getting higher for younger people. So I wanted to check it out for myself. So one of the first things you have to do when it comes to pivot tables is structure your data properly. So as you can see, these are all columns of data and they all have headers, which is really important for pivot tables to identify what your field names are. Now, if you have data that's in both rows and columns, you will have to translate that into columns only, and I'll show you how to do that in a subsequent tutorial. Okay, so there's lots of different ways that you can start up a pivot table. There are two that I like to use. So I either highlight the data that I want. In this case, I want it all. So the other thing I can do is I can just click Insert, Pivot Table, and let Excel do the guesswork for me. In this case, they guessed right. I want all my data, so I'm just going to leave it. Then you can choose New Worksheet or to put it someplace in this existing worksheet. I like to have it on a separate tab, so I'm just going to leave New Worksheet and hit OK. Now they've set up a structure for you and you've got this lovely display area here. Now this is the default of how the data will be displayed, but you can also say, so for example, if you don't like the field section stacked in the area section, you can look at it side by side. You can just take a look at the formats that you like. I personally like it to be stacked like this. So as I said, I'm interested in the age groupings. So are younger people getting COVID at a higher rate? So I'm going to throw my age group under columns. And right away, all of my data is starting to show up. So it's very interactive. Now you can throw date reported here, and then you can look at the data for each date. But that's too granular for me because I'm looking at trends. So really what I'm interested in more is by week. So I'll throw the week on top. Now you can see that I have what each week is showing is what dates fall under that week. So for example, if I go all the way to the bottom of this information, I can see that my last 3 days fall under week 21. So I'm looking at July 19th to the 21st as my most recent days. But in all honesty, I don't really care because I want to look at trends. So I'm going to take this date reported by clicking on it and just throwing it back up into the groupings over here. And I'm just going to look at it by the numbers of the weeks because I do know what week this is. This is July 19th to 21st. Now I have no data in here. So how do I get data in? Well, what I really want is I want to count. I want to know how many cases. So in that case, I'm going to take the date reported because there are cases for every date, and I'm going to throw it into this values area. Now, Excel determines, based on how the data is structured, that the best way to summarize this data is using count information, which is perfect for me because that's what I wanted. You can also choose, though there's lots of different ways under value field settings. You can choose sum or average, max or min. There's lots of different ways that you can calculate your data. In this case, they guessed correctly, so I'm going to leave it. Okay, so I still have to do some data cleanup here though. For example, if I look at my age categories, these are text fields. So in Excel, they read a text as 1 comes before 2, comes before 3. So I need to reorganize my ages a little bit. So I will click on my under 1 year, which should be my first column. I'll take this white cross, turn it into a black cross by just going just over top of the area that's been highlighted, and then I can move it all the way to the beginning. I'm going to do this for all of the age categories that need to be moved so that everything's in the right order. Great. So now all my ages are in the correct order. I also have this weird unknown column. There's only 3 people in here where they didn't know their ages. Those are outliers to me. I'm going to get rid of them by clicking on column labels, scrolling to the bottom, unclicking unknown, so there's no check mark next to it, hitting OK. So it cleans it up, but as you can see, it does remove it from the total. So you always want to be careful when you unselect data. Okay, so now I can see that every week there was a different number of COVID positive cases, and I can see what age categories that fell in. That doesn't tell me much about trends though, about proportions. So what I want to do is I'm going to go back to this values, click on value field settings again, and there's this tab called show values as. Well, what I want is for each week, I want to know what percentage of each age category was being represented. So that is under show values as percent of row total. So now each row is 100%. So that means that the pivot table has taken each value in these cells and divided it by whatever happened in that week. So for example, in week number 2, I had 9.62% of the cases in that week were in the 20 to 29-year-old category. So now I can see what the proportions are over time, but also in total. So the biggest bucket in total is this 30 to 39-year-old category. They have 20% of the cases so far, and 20 to 29 only has 17. But now when I look at the trends, you can see that the 20 to 29-year-olds were kind of in the 10 to 15% range in the early weeks. But now as we go through to June and July, they're mid-20s to high 20s. So they are definitely increasing in proportion. Now the other thing is what if I only want to look at things like active cases or deaths? I can also add in more filters here. In this case, I'm going to add a page level filter over here in this section, and I'm going to pull in case status. And now I have another drop down that I can choose. So I'm going to click on it and click, I only want to see the active cases. Okay, now my pivot table shrinks up so I see only the data I requested. In this case, I can see that we have the breakdown by age of only the active cases. And there was a case way back in week 8 that is still considered active. And in this case, now 27% of all active cases are in the 20 to 29-year-old group, which is the highest group. If I wanted to look at deaths, I can do that as well. And now we see a whole different picture. 70 to 79 and 80 plus are the two biggest groups, accounting for almost 92% of deaths in Alberta. So that's from a proportion perspective, but what if I wanted to see the total number of deaths now? Well, I just go back to my values field, click value field settings, show values as, and I select no calculation. Now it shows me the raw numbers again. So I can see that in Alberta so far we've had 174 deaths. So that's just a really quick introduction to pivot tables, specifically in Excel for Windows. But I will do some more tutorials around charts and stuff like that, how to change your rows and columns into pivot table formats. So I hope this was helpful for you, and keep watching for further videos.